Yeah, weirdness going on. Weirdness going on this morning, guys. Weirdness going on with the software. Is this the right? Trying to see what we got going on. Crazy network problems. Crazy network problems. Looks like folks are coming back. I don't know what happened. Let's bring the sound down. Good morning. Hey, Matt, I'm glad you can make it. I don't know if you're on the initial stream. That's the same stream. There's a second stream. Everything just kind of did a weird thing this morning. Definitely a delay. We've got a big delay going on right now. That's what's going on. We've got a big delay. But I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad we made it past the storm. Oh man. Yeah, that storm was vicious yesterday. Day before seemed worse though. Glad it's gone. Blue sky outside today. Outside the old weather window. It's a rough start to a Wednesday, but that's okay. We have a metric ton, a non-metric ton, a standard ton, whatever, of news this morning. Lots and lots going on with ransomware. We get some numbers out. Man, the amount of money that's going out to ransomware right now, it's crazy. Apple's in the news twice today for two different things. What else we got? Let's take a look at what's in the news today. I know there's folks gonna have to catch up. Folks are probably on the wrong stream. Weirdness going on because just weird Wednesday morning. Iran's in the news, jumping off as the first APT to use DNS-over-HTTPS as their attack vector. That's not good. Apple's been knocked off as the number one site to be phished, as the subject of a phish. Interpol is out talking about ransomware. Some ransomware stats are out. Some numbers about ransomware are out. Payment amounts about ransomware are out. It's just crazy. Twitter's back in the news again today. Just because they're Twitter. I mean, Twitter being just sneaky, downright scoundrels. Chinese hackers are talking about the Apple chipset and how there's possibly a problem with encryption that's going to make it an unfixable error. And it's National Underwear Day. What the heck else can we talk about? So, used to be off Wednesdays, but always had court. Man, at least it was a night court, like bowl back in the old days. You guys, if you're old enough, you may remember night court. Yeah, I'm glad you're here, Matt. Glad to see you this morning. Got a few people on Twitch. I think, I'd love to see a Twitch message come through to see if they're actually working. Last couple days we've seen Facebook working, so I guess Restream has fixed the problem. Maybe. If you're out there, I know some folks on Twitch. Drop a note. Let me see if Twitch is coming through or if it's not. Trying to figure out if we stay with Restream or if we drop them from the roster. They get put on the DL list or the permanent list. I don't know. One of the two. That's what we got coming up. We got a lot coming up. Hopefully you guys are doing good. Hopefully you're taking care of folks. A new round of phishing is going on. Phishing, I guess, using cell phones to call in and phish people. It's not going away. As long as people are taking money, as long as the scammers, and these are no different than the old school con artists. It's really no different. The delivery method is different. How they're getting to the victims is different, but it's the same old shell game. Morning, Dennis. I missed you on trivia night, man. I was looking forward to seeing you there, and unless you were hiding in the shadows, I didn't see you, man. But glad to see you this morning. Definitely good to see you this morning. Um, Hopefully all is well. All is well in the empire out there. Um, but let's get ready and talk about the news. Let's do the intro, then we'll roll into that. Oh, all kinds of news this morning. News is everywhere. APTs, man. APTs don't go away because I guess that's what they're all about. APTs, or advanced persistent threats, are all over the place. Normally we talk about North Korea, we talk about China, we talk about Russia. Today we're going to talk about the APT 34, known as oil rig, out of Iran. This is Iranian actors. They've always, one of the trademarks of these cats is they've always liked to mess around with DNS, domain name services, or domain name system, depending on where you're at. And there's a new type of DNS, and this is DNS over HTTPS, over Hypertext Transfer Protocol, secure, which means it's going out over port 443 instead of 53. And it's encrypted, right? So HTTPS, by its nature, is encrypted. This DNS over HTTPS is built to be more secure, faster, all kinds of improvements. The problem is it's HTTPS, which means as the defender, you can't see into the packet. It's encrypted. It's sending information in an encrypted fashion. So, speaking of webinar last week, Vincent Diaz, a malware analyst for Kaspersky, said the change happened in May this year when Oil Rig added a new tool to its hacking arsenal. And they've always used DNS. They've used the old DNS. You could use DNS to exfiltrate data by sending requests out over DNS with data attached to it. Oil Rig started using this new utility called DNS-Exfiltrator, as part of their attacks on the local networks. DNS-Exfiltrator, of course, is an open source project available on GitHub. Creates a covert communication channel by funneling data and hiding it inside non-standard protocols. In this case, HTTPS, DNS over HTTPS. Obviously, they're doing this to avoid detection, right? As a APT, or advanced persistent threat, meaning they want to stay on the network as long as possible, hopefully forever in their book. They want to use this channel to move data out in the sneaky way. So the article from ZDNet goes on to say, historically, the group has dabbled with DNS-based exfiltration techniques before adopting the open source DNS exfiltrator tool. In May, the group had been using a custom-built tool named DNS-Espionage, DNS-Espionage, funny, since at least 2018, according to Talos, NS Focus, Palo Alto Networks. And then in May, the campaign began, and Kaspersky said Oil Rig exfiltrated data via DNS over HTTPS, or DOH, to COVID-19 related domains. So that's a big thing. This DNS over HTTPS technique has been used by a bunch of malware actors, for about the last year. But this is the first time an APT has used it, and it makes sense that Oil Rig used it because they're traditionally known to be using DNS. So to move to this new way of exfiltration is the next logical step. So, okay, why are they doing it? Obviously, the reason they're doing it is to hide their tracks, right? They want to stay hidden on your network. They want to stay behind the scenes. They want to stay undetected so they can move as much data out as they can. And obviously, right now, the big targets, the new targets, are COVID-19 research, but the traditional targets are still in place. Military, critical infrastructure, DoD contractors, those kind of targets are still targets of interest for Oil Rig. because that's what they're doing. They're part of the Iranian Republican Guard, in one way or another. Either they're contractors supporting it, or they're actual soldiers in the Iranian Republican Guard. I mean, it's not. Most of these APTs are supported by the government that they work for. They are part of that government's organization, or the government's just turning a blind eye to them. Mostly they are working in support of the government, right? And that's what these folks do. They're trying to get information, they're trying to get money, they're trying to get data from other places to fund their local regime, right? And that's really what it's all about. That's what this is all about, is supporting that organization that they work for. And in these times, most of the times, APTs are working for the country that they're supporting: North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, tons of places, Syria. And you got to kind of, we have to understand these APTs a little bit at least. Start looking into them, figuring out what the APTs do, so that you can determine their TTPs, techniques, tactics, and procedures, so you can know what's happening. Like this one, how do you defend against it? You can't. Either you can do one thing: you're going to set up something like a blue code filter, outbound, checking all that HTTP traffic. That's rough. That's rough. Make sure you're patched your servers. Make sure you're educating your users. Make sure you have defensive measures in place. That's the things we have to do. This is a tricky one. Once they're on your system, once they're pushing data out, if you don't see them, it's going to be hard to detect this, because it is an encrypted channel outbound, and it's outbound. It's not outbound to a weird port like 10.645 or something like that. It's outbound 442. It's outbound in the normal HTTPS encrypted tunnel going out. So obviously it's hard to see what the heck is going on with this thing. It's just weird. Yep, there we go. I do see chat's not coming through again. So I saw the last message from Dennis, and then if I switch over to YouTube, I see was it Dennis saying I was at trivia? I don't think you can see my responses, probably because of this problem we're going through right here. And Paul is saying good morning. Obviously, they're not making it to the stream. So, Restream, you had your chance. I gave you the 18th chance to get it right, and it's just the chats aren't coming through, and that doesn't help me. It doesn't help me see what you guys are talking about, because we got to talk about these topics. And if I can't talk about them, then what good is it, man? So the morning's all about you and I and the group talking about these events. But if the chats don't come through, man, I got to drop. So that means we'll probably now go back to the original plan of just pushing the live stream out to YouTube, and I think that's the way of the world, man. That's the way we got to go. I didn't say, got Mike. If Mike Bravo's out there, Kalispell Brewing Company, coffee cup, best coffee cup in the world, I think, other than, of course, the Cyber-Recon Red Friday ones that you got to earn. This one's nice. It's got you always need a beer bottle opener in your coffee cup, I think. Important to have, I guess, because it's a brewing company. But there's that Illy coffee getting you started on the day, getting your day going, getting rolling. A good morning to you. So let's get past Iran. And that's one of the things we probably have to do. Start looking at these APTs, break them down, at least understand their main TTPs, where they're out of, and their real name, right? So this one we know, if we're going to go use something like the MITRE attack framework, if you go in there and look for oil rig, you're not going to see it. You're not going to see oil rig listed in the attack framework. You will see APT 34 listed in the attack framework. And when you select that APT 34 in the MITRE attack framework, it's going to lay out their attack plan. It lays out the attack plan as it relates to the cybersecurity framework, as it relates to the kill chain, so you can see when they hit each point and how you can defend against them. It's important to know that, and we do. If Alex is out there, you know, we've got to get to the point of talking about the MITRE attack framework. It's a good tool to know. And if you don't know about MITRE, MITRE is an FFRDC, a federally funded research and development corporation, which means they can do research, they can do engineering, they can do all the things up to, but not including O&M. They can't field systems and support them. They've got to just talk about building them. But one of the things they build a lot of security tools. And one of them being the MITRE attack framework. And it just lays out attack scenarios across the kill chain and what happens at each stage with different APTs. And you can build your own things into this if you want to. Build your own kill chain based on the threats to you. So if you're the risk person in your organization, you got to know these things. You got to know these APTs because they got to be built into your risk profile. They just have to be. If you're, depending on your sector, there's going to be different APTs coming after you. And it's just, that's the way it is. You need to stay over here on the YouTube chat window so I can see you guys chatting. So that's Iran. Iran's in the news. Apple's in the news twice today. First time around. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But Apple's been knocked off its perch as the most imitated brand for phishing attacks. That's been going along for a long time. A lot of people have been phishing using Apple as the brand of choice. But in the second quarter of 2020, Apple's dropped all the way down to 7. They've been replaced by a bunch of folks, including Amazon and Google in the shared #1 spot. And the reason is, obviously, COVID-19. We're doing a lot more work from home. We're doing a lot more shopping from home. So, the rundown somewhere in here. So, second quarter, Google took the top spot alongside Amazon, which are listed at 13% of the attacks, according to Checkpoint's telemetry, followed by WhatsApp and Facebook at 9%, Microsoft at 7%, Outlook at 3%, and then, obviously, Apple has plummeted all the way to the number 7 spot, sharing that with Netflix, Huawei, PayPal, which have 2% of phishing attacks. And that's just the people the social engineers are impersonating to get to you. And again, these social engineers are con artists. That's all they are. They've changed their tool set. Now they're using email. They're using calls to your cell phone. And now don't forget this. Now we're going to spend a lot of time helping our friends, family, and coworkers protect against phishing attacks, spear phishing, whaling, just normal big old broad net casting phishing, old school stuff. And we're going to tell them, watch out for fake email addresses. Hover over the web links to ensure that you're going to a known good site or it's not being spoofed. All the things we talk about in old-fashioned, old-school phishing and all its derivatives. One thing we don't talk about a lot is phishing or phone phishing. And that's where the attacker can clone their caller ID to look like they're someone else. Maybe they're going to call and they're going to say they're PayPal. They're going to call and say that they're your bank. They're going to call and say that they're your email provider. And the caller ID is going to come up saying, Bank of America, whatever. It's going to say the bank. And maybe even say like Bank of America Fraud Department. And when you get that call, and if they're convincing enough, which, let's face it, they're con artists. They do what they do because they're making money at it. And they're going to go after your accounts. They're going to go after your money. They're going to go after whatever they can get based on their attack plan, what they want to do. And very smart people get conned by these con artists. So we have to be defensive all the time. If I've heard enough of these little TikTok jingles. There's one of them that's don't be suspicious, a little don't be suspicious. song that plays on TikTok. And granted, I don't have TikTok, but I hear these things. So it's like, don't be suspicious, and it just repeats that. But as people in this era, we have to be suspicious. You got to be suspicious today. So do be suspicious. Um, question everything, as Mulder and Fox used to say back on the X-Files. Or Scully, Mulder and Scully, right? That's what they were. Question everything. If it's fraud department, just ask them, can I call you back? If they say no, that's questionable. If they're calling you, that should be the first clue. Make sure you know how the fraud department in your bank works, know how the compromise or the fraud centers of the big providers, if you're using PayPal, if you're using Swipe, if you're using Google, or whatever you're using, GoDaddy, whatever, make sure you know their protocols if something is compromised. Because now, one of the big attacks is they're going to call you saying that you've been compromised. You've been compromised, and we're here to help fix that compromise. Again, guys aren't dumb. They're making money, and they're generally not here. They're not in a place where we can touch them legally. That's just the way it is. So, first one, Apple falls from number one in phishing. Matt says, I've been getting them about lending properties. So like lending money, or just banking that way, Matt. Had somebody call me last week and ask if I just called from that number, and they supposed to apparently spoof my number. Yeah, spoofing a phone number is not hard anymore. Yeah, we got to watch out, and we watch out, but we've got to share this information with our friends, families, and coworkers, because they, as much as we think about this, they don't. And it's easy, even for us, to fall in a trap where it's convincing enough to give information you shouldn't be giving away. And then that's the key. Just question everything. I should have Scully or Mulder up on the screen there. Question everything. Bad juju, man. Lockbit. Interpol is saying that the Lockbit ransomware is affecting American SMBs. So medium-sized companies in America are actively being targeted by Lockbit ransomware, according to Interpol, based on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. So essentially, Lockbit, let me give you this is an article by Bleeping Computer. And they say the report was produced by Interpol's Crime Directorate, and it includes data from 48 Interpol member countries and 4 private partners, as well as info from analysis from Interpol's Cybercrime Threat Response and its Cyber Fusion Center, or CFC. And really, what they're saying is, Lockbit. We've talked about Lockbit. It's ransomware as a service, and it's human operated, which means there's not a Trojan behind it, there's not a worm behind it, there's not a virus behind it. It's someone actively hacking your network, and then once they get in, they're moving laterally around your network, and they're encrypting it using this Lockbit. And they're just saying that it's coming up more and more on the radar of Interpol that American companies are being targeted. Article goes on to say that ransomware strain operators use the publicly available crack map exec penetration testing tool to move laterally once they get a foothold on the victim's network. And they get the foothold however they can. They may get that through more than likely phishing or some type of social engineering attack to get in the network, move around laterally, and lock stuff up, right? Based on their analysis, Netwalker, Ryuk, and Cyber were the top ransomware families recently detected by Interpol's private partners, as they are consistently evolving to maximize potential damage in a single attack, as well as financial profit for its perpetrators. And we're going to talk about financial profit later. Oh, loans on properties lending tree. Okay, I get you, Matt. That's kind of what I thought. Yeah, people talking about giving you a loan on your property, that kind of stuff. Some what they've seen in the first 2 weeks of April, there was a spike in ransomware attacks by multiple threat groups, and then it's been dormant for a few months. And they're thinking that means that these organizations have a foothold into companies, but they haven't been acting on it. And we've seen this. We've seen these actors go dormant, they hang out for 5 or 6 months, then they pop back up on the scene. And that's retooling. That's maybe take care of things, maybe retraining people, whatever they got to do to get things going, and then they get back on it, get back on the horse. So Netwalker's out there. It's Lockbit. Sorry, Netwalker's in a different story. Lockbit's out there. They're attacking American small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses. If we know these are probably folks you know. The small and medium-sized businesses are usually the ones that are less protected. So part of the summary, regional cybercrime trends, International Criminal Police Organization of Interpol says the ransomware campaign carried out mainly through Lockbit malware is currently affecting medium-sized companies in some countries within this region. I guess it's human operated. Essentially, they're using some type of black hat technique to get into your network, move laterally, and start locking stuff up. And ransomware is the way, these guys teamed up with Maze a few months ago, just to maximize damage. The two ways we see these ransomware actors operate is totally 100% just locking your data up, just encrypting it, and then extorting you to get that unencrypted. And the second way, where we've seen like Maze likes to do, is exfiltrate data, then lock your data up, then get you to pay for it. If you don't pay for it, they release your data onto some public forum. And that's what we're talking about in this article. 2 months ago, Lockbit partnered with Maze to start creating this extortion cartel that allows them to share the same leaked data platform during operations and tactics. And the platform is pretty vicious because as this is ransomware as a service, remember, Lockbit is ransomware as a service. That means you can be an affiliate to the program, and really, you get about 30% of the profits of the ransomware attack, and then Lockbit keeps the rest. But they've got a tool that you can, once you steal the data, you can post it on this website, and you give it a countdown timer. So you give the victim maybe 5 days. I'm giving you 5 days to respond, to pay your Bitcoin, or I'm going to release this data to the public. And when you post it on this Maze-sponsored site, it's got your data there, and it's got a countdown timer. 5 days, 4 hours, 20 minutes, 13 seconds, till this data is automatically released to the public. And again, I've told you before, Maze is acting more and more like an actual corporation, like an organization. Matt's saying trying to get loans in places he doesn't even have property. Alex, Jim's saying lock them up. I'm saying if we catch these guys, we lock them up. That's for sure. At his collection phase, yeah, they're preparing, right? Yeah, I agree with you, Matt. If they move in, they can get a foothold in a lot of organizations. They don't have to exploit them all at once. They can hang out there, similar to what we see with APT, and wait for the right time to encrypt. Maybe they've been siphoning off data low and slow, like they say. Move the data off slowly, and that's a way you can do it, right? So you keep low and slow, and then they've got their foothold in there. When it's time to spring the trap, they encrypt the data, and maybe they're just doing it over time. I don't know, but we'd see a drop off and a pick back up. A good article. Bleeping Computer usually does some pretty good stuff. Somehow they get to talk to these folks too. A lot of times they'll talk to these ransomware actors, but that's Interpol doing their thing for Lockbit. Ponemon Institute, part of IBM, is just as, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Cost of a data breach global cost of data breach, on average, is down a little bit. It's averaged 3.86 million in 2020. That's the average cost of a data breach. And the reason I'm talking about it this morning, why you guys need to know this, is when you're fighting for security budget, when you're fighting for that, keeping that automated tool that does vulnerability scanning, or whatever you have to, whatever the fight is you have to fight every day to keep security tools in your arsenal, this is the data you need to provide, right? I know we haven't been breached now because security is kind of like the phone company. Nobody cares about the phone company till your phone doesn't work. So nobody cares about security till you've been breached, and then they want to point a finger. That's just the hard facts. That's how it is. So have this information available. Know that the average data breach is $3.86 million, a little less than $4 million for the average data breach. And that's down a little bit from last year. So it was 3.92 million last year, 3.86 million this year. The average time to identify and contain the breach is up a day from 279 days to 280 days. That's huge. That's amazing that these breaches, on average, last this long. Security automation deployed in 2019. There's 52% of the organizations. Now there's 59%. To me, that's maybe it's not causation, it's correlation. But know that when you're fighting for that budget, know that, hey, the cost of the breaches are down. We went from 52% using automation to 59%, and the average cost of the breaches went from 3.92 million to 3.86 million. I can help. The other nice thing about this article, and let me find it real quick, states in the article, and who is this by? This is by Security Affairs. A lot of different organizations coming up with news, which is good. It says the organizations with remote work arrangements cited costs that were nearly 137,000 higher than the global average of 3.86 million, while organizations estimated that the security skills shortage cost an average of 257,000 compared to the global average. So if you're using remote access to your network, that becomes a higher number by 137,000. If you have a skill shortage in security people, that's about 250,000, 257,000 higher. And obviously, these are numbers you need to know to fight for your budget. The other thing to know that I like about this article is they talk about the types of data and the cost of that data, right? So in this, for the first time, the report goes into deep analysis per record cost for data breach based on the type of records involved. Expert pointed out the customer PII, or customer personally identifiable information, was the most expensive type of record. Customer PII cost on average $150 per stolen record. And think about this: 10,000 records, 100,000 records, a million record breaches, 150 per stolen record. That's customer PII. Next is an intellectual property record at $147, anonymized customer records at $143, or employee PII. So that's the difference. Employee PII, $141. Unfortunately, customer PII was present in 80% of the incidents that were analyzed, and 52% of the breaches were caused by malicious attacks. So, looking at this, we see a giant chunk of intellectual property and PII. If those aren't on your radar, they need to be on your radar. And if you don't think you have PII on your network, you're out there working security, you're wrong. And we can take it along a lot of ways. PII can be anything. And if you look at the NIST definition, and trust me, I get it. I don't agree with all of it. If you have someone who on their signature block puts their level of education, then that becomes PII. If they put their level of education in the school they went to, that becomes PII. If you think about it, PHI is even a little more critical because it's healthcare information, private healthcare information. And that could be broadly categorized too. So how many people How many people in your email system will send a message to their boss saying, hey, I'm going to be out because I've got to go to a dentist appointment. I'm having a molar fixed, or I'm going to the hospital because I've got appendicitis or something like that. That becomes PHI. So if you don't think you have this on your network, you need to look at it. You need to think about it. And I know we can't always be, as I used to say, the Army lieutenant, that second lieutenant that is totally black and white about the book, right? So do I really think putting your educational, John Smith, PhD, on his signature block, do I really think that makes it PII? I think that's really stretching it quite a bit. But we need to find that good balance to what is there. A couple things Dennis is saying. Is this critical info leaked below driving so I can't look? No, I get you. I get it. Don't look, Dennis. We'll talk to it. It's just PII. They didn't even say it was critical. They didn't even talk about critical information, which could be all kinds of stuff. And that's a great point. Dennis makes a great point there. We're just talking here about just normal PII. Critical information, we could talk about critical information to the organization. They don't talk about that being breached. That's probably because maybe some non-disclosures they're under or something like that. Normally, in this article, they talk about PII and intellectual property, right? So they talk about the three types of PII: customer PII, anonymized customer PII, and then employee PII, and then intellectual property, right? So those are the kind of the two things they're really looking at. So the analysis of the threat vectors revealed compromised credentials were 19% of the malicious breaches, cloud misconfiguration, about 19%, and vulnerabilities in third-party software, about 16%. It's also got a cool little breakdown of who the attackers are. It's crazy, Financially motivated was 53% of these attacks, 4.23 million. Hacktivists, about 13%, 4.28 million. Nation states, about 4.43 million in the cost of the breach. So pretty good article. Check it out in the article below in the show notes. Breach stats for preserving security budget. Yeah, it's all tied up here. They really didn't. Yeah, Dennis is asking again. He meant breach stats for preserving the security budget, and it didn't go into that article. The article didn't go into that, but I think they linked to the Ponemon actual report. So the breach report is in there. I'm gonna check it out later today. I haven't looked deep into this thing. I just saw this article first thing about 15-20 minutes ago as it came out. So probably worth checking this out. Checking out the data breach report, and I bet that's got it in there, Dennis. That how much of this is related to that critical information. I'd say critical information for the organization. That stuff, high risk information about the organization. Worth checking out. Worth going in there. Maybe we'll talk about the report itself a little bit more tomorrow. But great question, Dennis. Awesome questions. That's why I got to have the chat working, guys. Gosh dang it. Carlson Wagonlit, if you've been in the military, you know about Carlson Wagonlit. I thought they were a big military provider. They are, but they're huge. They're gigantic. They make a ton of money, and they're global. But reason they're in the news is not the best. The U.S. travel management firm CWT, or Carlson Wagonlit Travel, paid $4.5 million this week to hackers who stole reams of sensitive corporate files and knocked out. The attackers say they knocked out 30,000 computers, knocked them offline, according to the negotiation seen by Reuters. So CWT posted revenues of $1.5 billion last year with a B, and said they represent a third of the top S&P 500 companies, but declined to comment on the details. They claim that no PII was taken in this breach. I don't know how they can honestly say that, but they say it was more strategic information, more planning information. The CWT said they immediately informed U.S. law enforcement and European data protection authorities. And there was a digital ransom. Initially, they asked for the attackers asked for $10 million to restore the CWT files and delete all the stolen data according to the messages reviewed. And they had this in a chat session that was reviewable. And they're saying it's probably much cheaper than the lawsuit expenses, reputation loss caused by the data leakage. The attackers wrote on July 27th. So just, public ledger of digital currency payments, known as the blockchain, shows that the online wallet controlled by the hackers received the requested amount. Wow, hold on a second. I need some coffee. There we go. The requested amount of 414 Bitcoin on July 28th. This is the trend we're seeing. The problem is that some of the majority of the ransomware uses encryption that is so strong it can't be undone. And such attacks are thought, like this article says, that such attacks are thought to cost billions of dollars every year, either extorted payments or recovery costs. And the way we protect against this, right? And if Mike was here, he'd tell you, we back up our data somewhere offline, somewhere in the cloud, somewhere that the attacker, should they attack our network, they can't get to our backup data. That's not going to stop them from releasing the data should they get on the network. So we have to have those defensive measures in place that prevent the attack from starting in the first place. So education of the end user, I'm going to put that first on the list. Keeping your malware protection updated, keeping your systems updated and patched, having defense in depth and diversity of defense, including things like firewalls, IDS and IPSs, different antivirus, malware protection on your servers that are on your endpoint. That kind of stuff, if you stop them from getting on your network to start with, then they can't exfiltrate the file, they can't lock your systems up. And no, like we talk about this every time we talk about these malware or the ransomware attacks, your backup, if it's kept on the network where they can get to it, will still be normally, if you haven't been attacked in a ransomware attack, will normally be okay for data recovery or disaster recovery or continuity of operations. But if you get hit with a ransomware attack and your backup is sitting on the same network, then you are going to be likely having an encrypted backup as well. It's going to be hit by the same ransomware. So keep it off your system. Keep it off somehow. To keep it separated, I say air-gapped. I say, make your backup, disconnect from the network. Make your backup, have it up in the cloud, something like that, to where they can't get to it. They being the attackers can't get to it. But make sure you have some kind of a break between your network so they can't get to your backup. And then figure out how often you have to back up, because that's important too. It's important to figure out how often you've got to back up your stuff. So CWT is the news for that. I told you we'd be talking about Netwalker. This is not a really good graphic for Netwalker. Netwalker, we won't spend a lot of time on this one, but we'll talk about it. Netwalker ransomware earned $25 million in 5 months. But $5 million a month is not bad, not a bad amount of money. So this article is by Bleeping Computer again, twice they're in the news. Netwalker ransomware operation generated a total of $25 million in ransomware payments since March, according to it by a new McAfee report. Netwalker is ransomware as a service again. Second time we've seen that again. That began operating in late 2019, where affiliates are enlisted to distribute the ransomware and infect victims for a 60 to 70% cut of the ransomware payments. Again, known as human-operated or enterprise targeting malware, Netwalker affiliates will hack into an organization and quietly gain control. The article's got an example of one of the notes here that, hey, your files have all been encrypted by Netwalker. They have an extension. They show the extension. Shows a little bit about the note. While they're gaining access to the workstations, the attacker will steal unencrypted files that will be used later for leverage to get the victims to pay. Again, we're saying to take the files out, force the ransom. If the ransom isn't paid, maybe the organization has good backups, and they're just going to restore their systems. Well, the attacker still has that data, and they can still make it publicly available. It's important to know about Netwalker. Netwalker, first they attack the Windows domain controller, and then they use the domain controller to deploy ransomware to encrypt all the devices on the network. So normally a Windows network, but that doesn't have to be a Windows network. When first starting, Netwalker infections were few and far between. Towards the end of April, something changed, and the operation pushed in high gear, well, with a constant stream of new victims being reported by the site ID Ransomware. To increase this activity, the article states, the increase in activity coincides with Netwalker developers' recruitment drive on a Russian-speaking attacker forum. We talked about that too, where they were stated they were looking for experienced networkers with their own material. That's when they kicked up. They even posted the amount of money you could make, like a screenshot of the amount of money you could make should you help Netwalker increase its foothold, right? The site shows affiliate pressure. The site allows the affiliate to pressure the victim into paying with increasing anxiety as the timer counts down the time till the data is published. We're seeing that again and again and again. So yeah, ton of money. So think about this. These guys didn't come out till the end of 2019, the end of last year. Really weren't doing a lot in April. So we're talking about maybe part of April, but May, June, July, really 3 months. They've been really operating efficiently, effectively, and they made $25 million in just the first 3 months they've been active under this new campaign. Probably more to watch, So, lesson here, the thing we need to think about here is if you have an Active Directory domain controller, right? Ensure that you're putting more protective measures around that server, right? We should really be protecting the heck out of that thing anyways, because it's the domain controller. It's got all kinds of information on there that we don't want to get out, including all those password hashes. They're all there. So we don't want that stuff out. But that's the first stop for these guys, right? Maybe not the first stop. So they get into a system, they're going to start pivoting around. Their target is that domain controller. So they got to get to the domain controller. Once they get to the domain controller, they use that to spread the ransomware across the network. So we have to worry about that. We have to put some IDS, IPS protections around our domain controller that maybe aren't there now. More defensive measures on the domain controller. We know that's going to be the first stop of these guys, and they're doing nothing but growing. And they're affiliate, right? So we have to worry about the affiliates too, because it's like that multi-level marketing, MLM, getting those people under them, getting those people to sign on to be a distributor of this Netwalker ransomware. And obviously the more people they get, the more money they're going to have, the more places they're going to just breach this stuff. So how do we protect ourselves? That's how we protect ourselves. You got to keep them out of the network to start with. So end user education, malware protection, keep your systems updated and patched. Have defense in depth, diversity of defense. Why they want to do this, we know, is it's all about the money. It's all about the Benjamins, as they say. And again, I'll go back to saying, lock them up. If we get a hold of these guys, lock them up. More than likely they're in a country that doesn't extradite. They're in a country where they can hide out. Maybe they're in a country that is protecting them because they're, like Russia. As long as you don't go after, if you're a hacker and you're a large hacking group in Russia, normally the state won't come after you unless you start attacking Russians. That's just kind of the hard and fast rule right now. It's crazy. So yeah, this Netwalker. No Netwalkers out there. APTs and APTs, phishing, and this ransomware. Biggest things on the list. Twitter going away. Twitter going away. FTC is investigating Twitter for potential privacy violations. We'll keep this one short and sweet because we've talked about Twitter way too much, right? So the Federal Trade Commission potentially is going after Twitter for potentially misusing people's personal information to serve ads, adding that it faced fines of between $150 and $250 million. So the short and sweet of this one is Twitter put out two-factor authentication, saying that if you provide your phone number, we can give you two-factor authentication, and we'll call you to verify that you are who you are when you're logging onto your account. They stated in their agreement, the end user license agreement, the EULA, that they wouldn't share that information, that phone number, that information, that PII would not be shared. But FTC has discovered that there was an uptick in advertising campaigns targeted at those numbers, and they traced it back to the fact that Twitter shared those numbers with advertisers. That's really what it is. And Twitter said, "Oh, it's an error that we this was an error, and we apologize. Sorry, we made a bunch of money on your PII. We're sorry about it. Please forgive us." But now FTC is going after after them. And it's probably been brought to light because of the Twitter breach. So that's what you need to know. If you had folks that use that two-factor authentication, which is good, we should be using multi-factor authentication. It was just there's nothing you really could have done to stop this. That was the best security measure. If you're using Twitter, use two-factor authentication. It's just Twitter was being unscrupulous. They took the numbers. They said they weren't going to use them for anything else, and then they sold them off to advertisers to target folks that use that platform. It's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate they went that way. Man, Twitter, come on, man, get your show together. And last on the docket for the news today, told you we had a lot today. Chinese hackers claim that Apple's secure Enclave chip has a new unfixable vulnerability, and they say it's the way that encrypts it. Let me find the part of this. Chinese hackers from Pangu team claim they have found an unfixable vulnerability that could lead to breaking the encryption of private security keys. And this is reported to Business Insider India, is who the article's by. But the report comes from 9to5Mac. The secure Enclave security co-processor is included with almost every Apple device. The company encrypts all of the data on the iPhone, iMac, Mac, Apple Watch, and other devices with random private keys. The secure Enclave chip is the only thing that can access all the keys and decrypt the data. So really, the new security flaw is present in all devices running chips between A7 and A11 Bionic. Apple has already fixed the exploit in the A12 and A13 Bionic chips, and then so the newer devices are safe. Back in 2017, a group of hackers was able to decrypt the secure Enclave firmware to explore how the component works, but they were unable to gain access to the private keys, so there wasn't any risk to users back then. But now this Chinese firm is saying, yeah, there is. There's the ability to access it. There's the ability to access the keys. And the ones we have to worry about are the A7 through A11 Bionic. And it seems to be every Apple device that's running this secure Enclave chip. So again, something you got to know. Lots and lots of stuff in the news today. Dennis Law and segmented networks. Yeah, you're right. Dennis talking about ransomware. Yeah, that should be. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, you got me, Dennis. That's it exactly. Definitely segment your networks. If that didn't happen, keep your enclaves protected, and there should be segments of your network based on what different parts of your networks do. And I mean, like, have a segment for HR, have a segment for research and development, and those two segments should only talk to each other based on specific rules. When we talk about our small office, home office build that we're doing, we're going to have a segment. Essentially, we're going to have it segmented off. We're going to have a virtual LAN that is our IoT devices. And those IoT devices will not be able to talk to our normal computers. They can talk to the internet because that's normally what they need to talk to. So we segment the things off. And big thumbs up for that, Dennis. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, segment the networks. Have your backups. Keep your backups offline. Keep the bad guy out of your network. And once they get in, try to control where they can go. So segmenting networks, yes, sir, I agree 1,000%. You need something to talk about around the water cooler. So we want to talk about what day it is. August 5th is National Underwear Day. Crazy day. This was Fresh Pair, the internet company, founded National Underwear Day on August 5th, 2003. So it's been around a little while. Celebrate this day every day, you know. And then there's also the link I put. I didn't put the Fresh Pair in there. I put a link to 95.7 The Beat. I don't know where these guys are out of. The Central Coast's #1 hit music station. You can listen live if you want on that link as well. But they got a rundown of National Underwear Day. They also say it's National Work Like a Dog Day and National Oyster Day as well. Yeah, Alex is saying segmentation equals good. Yeah, Alex, I agree 100%. It's great Dennis put that up. That's why we help each other out here. That's what it's all about. And yeah, network segmentation is awesome. It's going to help keep. It costs money. It costs money to do it. It costs time. It costs, you got to have the right equipment, and that's what we're going to talk about when we build out. So National Underwear Day is what you talk about around the water cooler. That's the rundown. That's your rundown of stuff going on today. There's a ton of stuff. There's a ton of links that I put in the show notes for all these articles if you want to read more about them. You want to fact check me, make sure I'm right. That's good. You want to read more about that report from the Ponam group. Ponam, where did that report go? Ponemon Institute. This guy's name, I messed up the guy's name. That's not good. Part IBM talks a little bit more. Maybe you can go back and answer Dennis's question. Confidential or sensitive information, or that should be in the breach report itself. Check out the breach report. Good numbers to have. Write them down in your notebook. Put them on a note. Drop them on a sticky note on your computer. Put them in a notepad, something, so you have them. If somebody comes and challenges, why do we need security? This is why we move this stuff forward. This is what breaches cost. That one PII record is going to cost you $150. You lose it, and we got 10,000 of them. Do we want to go through that, or do we want to keep scanning for vulnerabilities, amongst other things? So that's what I got to talk about this morning. I'm so glad you guys are here. I don't know. We're going to pull the plug on this restream, but I guess it's on life support now. Sometime this week or early next week, we'll pull the plug and kill restream. That means we'll only be broadcasting to YouTube live. We'll throw everything else up later as a repost, but it seems we've got to do it. Got to be able to talk, because I want to be able to put your stuff on the screen so everybody can see it. In case maybe you can't hear what I said, it's good to see it too. So Mike's going to tell you, go get some today. Go out there and make things happen. Do the right thing. Try to help protect your friends, families, coworkers. That's what we do as a team. We got to take care of those people, because you're only as secure as your weakest link, and you don't want that to be your friend, family, coworker that gets breached and then somehow leads the attacker to your doorstep. We don't want that. We don't want them to get breached anyways to start with. So take care of your friends, take care of your family. If you haven't hit it yet, if you haven't hit it, hit the subscribe, hit the bell to be notified. Share the video with your friends if you can. We want other people to know about this stuff. Hit the comment below, and obviously hit that like button, because that helps the logarithm. And I guess that's it. That makes us the rounds. Finished up right at the hour point, or the half hour point. So I think it's time to let you guys go. Alex, no, thank you. Alex says thank you. I thank all you guys. The input is great, keeps me going, and we all have a part to play in keeping our friends, families, and coworkers secure, as well as the organizations. We're going to go out in the next hour or two to go out and support and make sure that things are locked down like they should be. Make sure your risk people know about ransomware. Make sure they know. So until tomorrow, you guys be safe out there, and we'll see you then. So 7:30, same time, same place, East Coast time. Be safe, guys.